Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody. It's January and today we are talking about underrated signings your club should bring in. Coming up on today's show, we talk about the Arsenal forward that could win them the league.
Arsenal do need to treat this January transfer window seriously because they are still in the title race.
The wingback that is perfect for Ruben Amorim.
If you are an opposition player, you must just think, have a day off with him because he's just so relentless on and off the ball.
And the wonderkid that could save West Ham.
There just needs to be a rethink at that club.
Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown, everybody, where myself and McCubbin are joined by content superstar Neve. Neve, welcome back to the Lowdown. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board for today's episode. Today, we are talking about underrated signings your club could make this January. We've picked out 5 clubs up and down the Premier League that have glaring issues this January that need to be fixed. Guys, let's kick off with Arsenal. I am playing the role of sporting director. Neve and McCubbin will suggest a signing each for each scenario. I will have ultimate say. So get prepared to impress. Let's kick off with Arsenal. I suggested that you might look at a forward, but you can go with any direction or go in any direction you'd like to. Neve, we'll give you the honours. Who do you think Arsenal should sign this January?
So I was thinking Victor Osimhen is being eyed up by a number of teams, and it's such a complicated situation with his contract. But if there is a way that you can be the team that sneaks him in, I think go for it, because I think people forget just how good he was and is still. But I think he'd really suit Arsenal too, because there's so many games where I think that it's the movement in the box, that central movement, floating into the space when it appears, that I think is really missing from Arsenal. And also what are Arsenal really known for is that pressing. And he'll slot right into that. He's an absolute pressing monster.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, you are a Bolton fan, but you're also a Napoli fan. And talk a little bit about Osimhen's impact in that amazing 22-23 campaign. He was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he created goals by himself. And there would be games where perhaps Napoli did not need to be in total control or perhaps particularly brilliant, but him and Kvaratskhelia would sort of drag the team through from the top, and he would set the standards as well so that nobody ever switched off, and led by example. And I think as well he instills a bit of bravery to the rest of the team because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Napoli, it was such a bizarre situation in the summer. They were looking for that permanent deal. It didn't quite materialise with Chelsea. And then in the last minute, he goes to Galatasaray. And he got off to a reasonably slow start. But I think it's now 13 goals in 16 games with 5 assists as well. He is just far too good and far too much in his prime for the Turkish Super League right now. No disrespect to the Turkish Super League, but it's just not at the same level of Serie A or the Premier League. So I think Victor Osimhen is a good shout. Mikey, did you go down the striker route? Did you look at a different place for Arsenal?
I guess I was going to ask you, Neve, were you not tempted to go for another forward position? Because my one worry with Osimhen is that you could bring him in, but the chance creation at Arsenal, although it has improved in recent weeks with that Saka injury, Neri out now, we're not sure how long he's going to be out. The issues that they had when they didn't have Erdegaard, I feel like chance creation is where I'm more worried from an Arsenal perspective, rather than having someone there to get on the end of chances.
Yeah, I do understand. And I think, maybe that left-hand side could be a potential option for them. It depends how they want to go about it. They might also look at it and think, if we get a striker who is an out-and-out number 9, then maybe it'll be easier to create those chances for them. It's difficult to create chances when there's not really that much movement in the box, and I really do think that's a huge problem for Arsenal. I remember the Newcastle game, it really stood out to me in that Havertz, as good as he has been, there are so many moments where I'm like, go on, just go and get into that space there, and I just don't think it comes naturally to him, and not really to Jesus either. So I do believe that it would be easier to create chances if the movement in front of the Arsenal midfielders as well was just a little bit more.
I guess in that sense as well, if Arsenal were to sign Osimhen, then it would free, Gabi Jesus suddenly becomes a bit more of an option on the right. Potentially, we saw him play there quite a lot for Man City, didn't we? Kai Havertz then becomes more of an option behind the striker. So I think, I do see it, but from my perspective, I had to go for someone on the right actually, or someone who can play on the right at least, just because I think that Saka injury could be quite devastating over the next 2 months if he is out for over 2 months, as Arteta initially said he was. And Arsenal did deal with the Saka injury pretty well initially. That Ipswich game, I think they created nearly 2xg, barely conceded anything. The Brentford game as well, there were moments where Brentford could have taken the initiative in that game, but generally speaking, Arsenal were dominant in terms of their chance creation. But the Brighton game worried me a little bit, especially when Nwaneri coming off at half time. Martinelli and Trossard are their only, at this moment in time, only fit wingers. And so I do feel like having someone just even on a very short-term basis who can produce things out of nothing, someone who's a bit of a maverick, someone who plays with no fear, and fill that gap that is so stark when Saka isn't there, I think would be amazing for Arsenal. And he's someone who was linked with them kind of around October, November time when he wasn't getting much game time on a loan, and that's Real Madrid's Arda Guler. And I just think it just makes a lot of sense to me. Even if Nwaneri comes back in a week or two, he's still only 17 years old. It's a lot of pressure to have him stepping in for Saka at that age, as good as he is. And they've got Spurs, Villa, City in the league, Newcastle in the EFL Cup semi-final as well. And he is getting more game time now at Real Madrid. That would be my one thing. It's like, maybe Madrid just won't let him go at this point. They've taken the initiative or beginning to take the initiative in the La Liga title race. Vinicius Jr. has been banned recently, hasn't he? They do need options there. Brahim Diaz was injured earlier in the season. But even when Brahim Diaz was injured earlier, what was it, September, October time, Guler wasn't really played that much. And, Ancelotti does also have that option to play Bellingham further forward and play with split strikers rather than having wingers. So I think Real Madrid definitely could deal without Guler. And also I think it would be beneficial for Madrid to have him sent out somewhere where he's going to get more game time, a top club like Arsenal, playing for a Premier League title. Like, I think that's the thing with, and I guess with the Osimhen shout as well, is like, yeah, Arsenal do need to treat this January transfer window seriously because they are still in the title race. All Liverpool need to do is lose one game and suddenly it's only 6 points in it.
Well, 6 points if they win their game in hand, because it's 6 at the moment with a game in hand. So yeah, it's potentially going to get very tight. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, I get that.
So my question is though, then once Saka does come back, what happens to Guler?
But I think the strength with Guler is that he can play in the centre as well. He, I think, has played on the left a little bit before. He's even played at centre forward, I think, for Turkey. I do get that. But if, say, Arsenal were able to get Guler in the next couple of weeks, then you've got a good 5-6 weeks with him. Also, Champions League. There's so much, rotation that could happen in that Arsenal squad that I think Guler would get quite a lot of minutes. And if he plays himself into form, then maybe Mikel Arteta has the luxury of being able to not play Saka every game anyway. This is someone who came into Real Madrid a year ago and scored on his debut, rounded the keeper 2 minutes after coming on, scored on his, I think it was against Sociedad on his first start in La Liga, had that amazing Euros as well. He absolutely oozes confidence. And so if there's any teenager out there who I could see coming into a big Premier League club and making an instant impact, is someone like Guler. They need to almost think beyond Saka because they relied on him so heavily in that first half of the season. I think it's no surprise that he's come away with this injury, the first real major injury of his career, 2 months after he was having to do so much work to make up for Ødegaard's injury. He's just been carrying that attack on his back. And so I think having Guler in there, even if it is just on a short-term loan, could be really beneficial. And then maybe it will make them rethink a little bit as well towards the summer. Do we need to get someone in this mould in general for this attack? It doesn't necessarily solve the left-hand side, but I think Martinelli and Trossard playing there, that's fine. If they've got if 2 out of 3 of those attackers are on song, then I think Arsenal should have enough to at least make up some ground on Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout, Arda Guler. I think Osimhen's a good shout as well. I actually went on Sky Sports News last week on the football show and was talking about Arda Guler and how he'd be a good fit for Arsenal. So you have hit my sweet spot.
I didn't even realise that, but accidentally got in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've used Arsenal as a loan club beforehand. They've obviously got that relationship long established through Mesut Ozil going there, but Martin Ødegaard in particular in January 2021 to sort of rebuild his career. The thing with Arda Güler is I think he's closer to the first team than Martin Ødegaard ever was at Real Madrid, and they are in a 3-way title race. It doesn't feel like it might be 3-way for that much longer because Barcelona have a bit sort of crumbled since sort of mid-November time. maybe Real and Atleti will become the key battle for the end of the year, and Mbappe's starting to click, and there's a real excitement now about what's going to go on in Spain for the rest of the year. And if I was Real Madrid, I wouldn't be letting Arda Guler go right now, especially with the fact that with Cruz having left in the summer and no sort of natural midfield replacement signed, they are a little bit shorter in midfield. But I do agree with you that Arsenal for so long have feared for this sort of the idea that, who's going to want to come in and play second fiddle to Odegaard and Saka? And the fact that you can cover that in one position or one player with Arda Guler, I think is really exciting. And stop worrying about what it means for the player and actually what your side needs most of all, because your team can't fall apart to the extent that Arsenal's has this season. And fall apart's a big phrase because they've still been right at it in loads of games, but they shouldn't have this massive drop off if two players aren't available in Saka and Odegaard. Like, Premier League and Champions League challenging squads have depth, better depth than Arsenal have right now. So I think Arda Guler is a good shout. To be honest, right now for this January, Neve, going into it, I thought you were both going to suggest wing talent, and I do like Arda Guler to Arsenal. So I'm going to go 1-0 to Mikey
edged it
on the back of that. But he did speak to my heart for that one. Right, let's go to Man United. They are 13th in the table. They are 13 points off top four. They're in an interesting position where kind of the league is, it's not irrelevant, but they don't feel like they're going to qualify for European football. It's really about setting up the league for next season and making sure that there's not been enough morale and confidence damage through poor performances. And in December, it did feel like things were really falling apart, didn't it? And Amorim was already going to be, if it continued at that level, like under pressure, really. Huge result against Liverpool at Anfield on the weekend. I thought they were amazing. And it seems to have changed the perspective slightly. But I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't think United had to do something in January, and particularly in the summer, to sign players more suited to the system. So, Neve, you're Man United. Who do you think you should go for? Underrated signing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think he's underrated anymore, Antonee Robinson, to be quite honest with you. I have said persistently that I still think it's that midfield, though, that I think if United would sign somebody just with more legs who can have a bit more movement and move around with Bruno and whoever the other midfielder would be, that could have a drastic improvement. And that's where I sort of brought Reinders and Stiller in, but I just don't know how realistic that is. I really don't know what standard of signing that Manchester United can make right now. That's why, like, the result, that Liverpool result, the performance actually from the players at the club, it's so important, because it's those performances that might convince players to join. A performance like that might convince Robinson that it's worth joining, because without that, why would he leave Fulham to join Manchester United? But I think what it is about Robinson, I do somehow feel there's elements of his game that are quite underrated, in that something I alluded to with you guys was just that movement up and down the pitch. It's so far into the opposition's defence. It's into the penalty box. He's so comfortable. And if you watch every fullback, there's a level where when they get higher up the pitch, they start to drift inwards and they hover outside the box, and they don't have that confidence to go that one bit further. And he does, because he knows he's got the legs to run back. And if you are an opposition player, you must just think, have a day off with him, because he's just so relentless on and off the ball. And we've now seen just how good that creativity that he has is. So it's useful, because he's got all the attributes of a winger, but you're really not losing too many elements of defence with him.
Yeah, I think he's amazing. And I think I was really worried for Fulham at the start of the season, perhaps naively, given the fact that João Palhinha left in the summer. And he was not just the outstanding defensive player in terms of defensive numbers, like tackles and interceptions in the Premier League, but in Europe last year. And I thought that's going to be really difficult to replace. But Antonee Robinson has compensated for that. I think he's up there with Moises Caicedo, I think, for most defensive actions in the Premier League this season. But also, he's got this final third game, as you say, that I think is just vastly improved now as well. I think it's 6 assists this season. I think going into this weekend, only Salah and Saka had provided more. He just feels like the complete all-round package. And whilst, if a Liverpool comes in for you, you're probably going to go to Liverpool. Man United, from Fulham to Man United, is still a massive step up in size of club. And if you can, as you say, get invested in the improvement of Amorim's team in those bigger games, and see that that's what they're going to be in 2-3 years' time, and I'm going to be a key part of that going forward, then I think Fulham to Man United is an achievable move for Antonee Robinson. So I'm excited by that. But Mikey, try and woo me.
Okay. interesting. It's hard coming up against Antonee Robinson here, I think. I've also gone for a left wing back. I think it is the glaring position. I think you two were talking about it on the transfer show earlier this week. Dallow's standout performance against Liverpool, but really you kind of want to see him play at right wing back. Mazraoui has probably been Man United's best player this season. I'd quite like to see him as the right-sided centre-back, to be honest. I think that in terms of how Amorim's system will work...
Does that mean De Ligt drops out to the bench for now?
Potentially, or De Ligt moves to centre-back. I don't know if, I know Maguire's been great, but, I don't know whether he's going to be United's starting centre-back forever. I don't know. I think you need depth there, quite honestly. I think United, if they're going to progress, they want to have, two quality players in all of those positions. And so, left wing back I think is vital. And though this player has not had the season that Antonee Robinson hasn't had the 2 seasons that Antonee Robinson has had over the last 2 years, in some ways, well, first of all, I think he's more gettable than Antonee Robinson. And second of all, I don't know if United need a super amazing player to play left wing back. I think they just need someone who, is a left wing back by trade and will take on Amorim's instructions and just keep the width and be able to put balls into the box and be able to track back when needed. I think they need someone who's just going to do the job,
like a system player.
A little bit, because I think there's a lot made of like needing to up the quality of United's squad, but really it's just about having the right players in the right positions. And I think United need to, for financial reasons as well, for PSR reasons, you need to start thinking a little bit more like a mid-table club, which they are at the moment, in terms of, because the mid-table of the Premier League is it almost feels like the mid-table of the Premier League now is like 4th place to 11th place. Like the quality there is not the gap in quality isn't particularly stark there. It's so competitive in that area of the table. So you only need to make like a few tweaks to then actually rise quite quickly. But I digress. Tyrick Mitchell is the player I've gone for.
Really?
Partly
Nice.
Because he's out of contract in the summer. Maybe United will be able to do a good deal in January. Still wishful thinking, because he is not as important to Crystal Palace as Antonee Robinson is to Fulham, but it's still super important to Glasner's system. But I think he's been super impressive this season, especially given Palace's early season struggles. He's actually only Saka, Martinelli, Porro and Robinson have attempted more crosses into the box than Tyrick Mitchell this season. He ranks 8th for crosses completed in the Premier League. He's always ranked really, really highly for tackles and interceptions. I think he was 5th in Europe's top 5 leagues last season. So he seems like the full package. He's not as good in the final third as Robinson, clearly, but I think in an attacking sense, he has come on a lot under Glasner and in general over the last 2 years. He's at a good age at 25. He's got 5-6 years of Premier League experience now, and he really is not he really does not invert at all. Like, he really does hug that touchline and covers so much ground. He may not have the star quality of Robinson in terms of his delivery, in terms of his ability to create numerous high quality chances in a game. But what he does have is that engine to get up and down. And that ability, I think he just improved a lot in the final third.
See, this is where I think data sort of contradicts my eyes a little bit with him, because I don't really see that in him. I don't see power in his legs. I often look at him and think, could that be a play? I look at Munoz on the other side, for example, who's up, down, he's in the face, he's winning the ball for Crystal Palace high up the pitch, leading to them scoring against Chelsea. And I look at Tyrick Mitchell on the other side, and I think defensively he's been quite solid, but in terms of that power getting up the pitch in an attacking sense, I think he would have to adapt his game to suit what United are doing. Whereas if United were to get someone like Robinson, who I actually think Palhinha leaving Fulham has really helped Robinson, because instead now they've got 2 midfielders, Lukic and Berger. And so they will often cover for Robinson. He pushes up high, and then Iwobi will sort of tuck in a bit almost like a number 10 in United setup. So he's got that space. He's sort of used to the exact things he's going to do. Whereas I think Mitchell would have to really change his game. And I do think United could do better. I feel like that would be more of a convenience signing.
Yeah.
based
I
on
kind of went for it because it's like realistic.
I don't think he is out of contract, by the way. That's a really interesting topic.
Well, I heard there was rumours that he signed a new deal kind of in secret, but then it's just not been officially confirmed. So I'm a little bit. That's a little bit up in the air. So that might that would be that would obviously be a difficult one.
I kind of agree with Neve. Whenever I think of Tyreek Mitchell, I think solid 7 out of 10 defender, but not necessarily the most thrilling in the final third. And I kind of want a game changer at left wing back. I really do want a game changer. And there's actually reports today. I'm not really sure of their validity. And I think it's a bit obvious. Maybe they just saw, he used to play at Sporting CP. It's a good fit for Amorim. But Nuno Mensch is being linked to Man United. And look, I think you don't swap PSG for Man United right now. I think you'd be mad to do that. But it does show that whether that's true or not, Man United have really big ambitions in terms of the calibre of players they sign. Like even on the back of what their worst Premier League campaign was it ever last year, they still managed to sign Matthijs de Ligt, and there's question marks over what level he's truly at. And Mazraoui, Lenny Yoro, one of the most highly rated defenders in France. Mazraoui coming from Bayern, de Ligt coming from Bayern, Agassi coming from PSG. Like they won't want to. I think sort of from a PR perspective, signing Tyreek Mitchell is quite damaging. For this new era, you've got a fresh manager, one of the most exciting managers in Europe, was coming in on a real high. Difficult start. You really want to nail that first signing. And for me, the nailed on first signing would be Antonee Robinson over Tyreek Mitchell. So I'm giving that 1-1. But interesting suggestion so far. Let's move on to Man City. They are currently 6th. They are 4 points off 4th. It's absolutely mad just even saying that out loud now. But they're on track for 64 points, which would be their worst season since 2008-09. Now, only West Ham, Everton and Fulham have an older average age in the Premier League this season. So I didn't tell you this beforehand, but I might be swayed by the age of the player that you suggest as well. And they've had huge injury issues in defence. Rodri's obviously out. I think you could go for a defender. I think you could go for a midfielder. You could pretty much go for any position. Mikey, you lost the previous round. Who is your Man City suggestion?
Got it all to play for. I'm actually going to mention someone that Neve mentioned just a minute ago in relation to Man United, and that's Angelo Stiller at Stuttgart. I think with Man City, like they've had a lot of links to Ederson at Atalanta recently and over the last few months, and I think this time last year he was like I felt like he did make sense a lot as someone who could play both with Rodri and alongside him. But I think his profile's pretty big now. He's in that title race with Atalanta. I think it would take a lot of money to get him out of there. And I think Stiller, the ceiling with Stiller, I think is higher. The fact that we've not seen him, I guess with Stuttgart last season, they were, they almost were in a title race, like had an amazing year. But I don't know. I'd love to see what he could do in like a Pep Guardiola team because he, came through at Bayern Munich, played under Sebastian Hoeneß for Bayern Munich's reserve side. Then, Hoeneß went to Hoffenheim, signed him within, or at least got the deal done for him within 6 months, and then had him the following summer. Then goes to Stuttgart, signs him in his first summer. Like he loves him so much, and I actually think like Sebastian Hoeneß. I know Stuttgart are like 9th or 10th in the Bundesliga at the moment, but they're only like 3 or 4 points off the top 4. I do feel like when Pep Guardiola's contract runs out in 2-3 years, is it 2 or 3 years time? I think by that point, Sebastian Hoeneß could have built the kind of profile of manager to be a potential successor to him, given just how amazing a job he's done at every club he's been at, and of course started coaching at Bayern Munich, in that kind of post-Pep era, which is still carrying on today in terms of like the style of football that Bayern play. So from that perspective, it interests me, but also I think just the fact that he is a midfielder who can almost do it all. He's an amazing passer. Looked up to Toni Kroos and Xabi Alonso growing up. Is a decent defensive midfielder in terms of his defensive numbers. In fact, I think he would rank among City's top tacklers this season if he was there. In Stuttgart, also play a high possession game too. So it's not like they're just having to defend all the time. But yeah, like his progressive passing is just like absolutely amazing. His ability just to move the ball upfield quickly, and that tenacity, the legs that he's got. Yeah, I think that's kind of what City need, don't they? Because Gundogan, is not as energetic as he used to be. Not even Bernardo Silva is. They're missing that tenacity in midfield, and massive task to fill Rodri's boots. But I think actually when he's been fit, Kovacic has played pretty well this season. He's had a really difficult job, and I think it might be time for Pep to alter the system a little bit to give that midfield a bit more support, actually. And if you brought Stiller in there and had him in there instead of, say, KDB or Bernardo, then I think that foundation is so much more solid.
I like it. I like it a lot. I think we did a How Long Ref episode, and even you were giving Sebastian Hoeneß a big shout out as well. So you've clearly been on a similar wavelength as well. But who is your pick for Man City this January?
So I look at the defence at Manchester City, and it's often just so disjointed.
Yeah.
And I also look at the gap between the midfield and the defence at times as well. And I think the reason why Gundogan is given the minutes he's given, even though he struggles clearly physically, is that authoritative nature of directing players where to be. If you watch him, it's him who's sticking his hand out and directing play. So I'm thinking, right, well, we need to get legs into that area, but we need a little bit of leadership and someone who's going to direct. And I look at Carlos Baleba at Brighton, and I know he's young, but actually he does dictate the players around him a lot. He is sort of giving instructions on where to be, and I think his positional discipline really impresses me. Recently watching Brighton, actually, and I sort of watched him, and at first I wondered, is this instructional, or is he just hesitant to break out? Because he was really sticking to the midfield zone, and he really didn't commit forward too much during the game I watched, and it was the same again in the second half, which led me to believe he's being instructed to do this, and I was just really impressed by that, because what it meant was he was selflessly preserving his energy to have so much movement and cover ground to cover for everybody else, and I was really, really impressed by that maturity, and again, the way he just sort of speaks to those around him. I thought, actually, no, for a young player, there's a lot of leadership potential there, and I think it'd be a real statement signing as well, because I know a lot of Premier League clubs will be interested in him.
Oh, this is a tough decision. This is a real tough decision.
I mean, really, City should sign both of them.
Ideally,
that'd be
a sensational January. Look, I think Baleba's the more physical. He's already got Premier League experience. I think Steele's the better passer, probably a more complete all-round game. Oh, this is really, really difficult. Who do I think could make the biggest instant impact in this Man City side? Who do I think would add most to what their midfield currently lacks? I'm actually going with Carlos Baleba.
Ooh.
I'm going with Carlos Baleba, despite the fact I think Angelo Steele is a better player right now and will be a top player, international, no doubt. And someone should swoop in that in the next 6 months for sure, especially with Stuttgart struggling compared to second in the Bundesliga last year. But I'm going with Carlos Baleba. I think he's got a lot to learn, but I do think he could instantly just up the physicality levels of that midfield as well. I mean, I nearly listed it at the start when I was setting you your parameters, but Bernardo, Stones, Kovacic 30, Ederson's 31, Ortega's 32. They're going to have to sign 2 goalkeepers before too long as well. De Bruyne 33, Gundogan and Walker 34. This side needs legs. It needs instant physicality, and Carlos Baleba does that for me. What I do think is quite interesting as well is I thought one of you guys might go centre-back as well, because John Stones, he just can't stay fit for Man City. I can't really think of a player who's had such bad luck at club level with injury, but yet has been so solid for England for so long. Between the 2018 World Cup and World Cup 2022 in particular, Stones was phenomenal for England. But yet at Man City, it just feels like his body consistently lets him down, and he's not always a guaranteed first pick when he is fit as well. So I think they'll look at a centre-back in time. But for right now, I'm going with Carlos Baleba. But I think that was a tight one, guys. I think 2 great suggestions. Right, so it's 2-1 to Neve. West Ham, guys, 13th in the league, 24 goals to date, 14th in the Premier League. Julen Lopetegui holding on by his fingernails somehow. 8 points out of a possible 18 in their last 6 games. Really, really difficult. Neve, I think McCubs went first last time. Why don't you kick off with West Ham?
Yeah, so I initially thought of a midfielder, and because I really like Gus Hamer at Sheffield United, and I look at the midfield at West Ham, and I think they're another club that they really struggle with a lack of movement. And in the games where I think Paqueta's had quite a poor season, but in the games where he's performed, him and Soler have really dominated the ball. And I think if they were to have an engine with them, someone to do movement, they could do that a bit more. It could have a positive domino effect with them, and it helped their overall game. But then I've sort of seen these rumours now of Evan Ferguson, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I feel like there's a deal that could be made there, and I'm surprised more clubs aren't hovering around Evan Ferguson to be the ones to scoop him up. He's so powerful. We've seen what he's all about. We've seen how clever his runs have been in the past.
His value is also must be so much lower than it was a year or two ago as well. You know, when we were talking about him being a potential £100 million player, it's like now, you know, I think is probably would be the time to invest if Brighton were willing to come to the table, because I feel like inevitably we will see Evan Ferguson rise again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mikel Antonio out for the season, of course, after that horrendous car accident. Jared Bowen's now fractured his foot, I believe, as well. He's out until February time. He's been directly involved in 9 league goals. No one else has been involved in more than 4. I think you could go for a midfield as well, because I do think they really implode in games, West Ham. Like they quickly they concede goals in gluts of goals in quick succession. I feel like those midfielders, a lot of them are really talented players, but just don't seem invested in the team this year at all to the same extent that they were under Moyes, and there's trouble there for sure. So Evan Ferguson's Neve suggestion, Mikey, who was yours?
Yeah, I do agree. I think West Ham, it's really difficult, and I think you could invest all over that side because, once again, you know, they're not playing a particularly attacking brand of football, but they're not very good defensively either, and they invite so much pressure onto themselves. And it's like, well, you could invest in the defence, but then, you know, does just a new manager make them better defensively, or just a better, more functional team? And maybe a midfielder is the answer. Maybe you do just need someone in there to lighten the workload and the players around them a little bit, a bit more legs. Or maybe you just need a bit more power at fullback as well. It's a difficult one, but I think I did go for the attack. I did go for someone who can fill in at centre forward, or could be their starting centre forward. I initially looked at Jonathan David at Lille, another player who's out of contract soon. You know, he said that he's 50-50 about signing a new one. Has talked in the past about going to the Premier League, but he didn't quite fit the profile for this video. I didn't think. I think he is underrated in that, you know, top clubs have continually not come in for him, or at least, you know, as it was reported last summer, you know, the agent fees were too high for a lot of clubs, and so they were put off him. But I also think you're just not going to get him out of Lille right now. They're pushing for Champions League spots. He's the top scorer in Ligue 1. So I went for someone else in France, went for Lyon with Georges Mikadatsa. I know he's only got there last season, only bought him last season from Ajax. But Lyon, you know, do need to make a fast sell this January in order to avoid relegation. So I thought, and obviously a player who's been, you know, talked about loads in the last few weeks has been Ryan Cherky, but I don't know how many clubs are going to be willing to spend loads of money on him, given the fact that he's so young, given the fact that, you know, attitude problems, etc. Mikadatsa has had an amazing couple of years. He's, you know, I think he scored 4 in the end this season, but 13 last year for Metz. Can play in a number of different positions in the forward line. Had an amazing Euros with Georgia. He's taking nearly 4 shots per game, and also you'd be able to get him for a decent price as well. There were reports this week that Galatasaray are trying to sign him, and a 21 million euro bid was turned down. But you think as January wears on, I think Lyon would be more willing to negotiate for something around that price, or certainly under 30 million, which is what's being reported that they want for him. So I think, someone in that mould, and someone who I think could work in a number of different attacking systems. There just needs to be a rethink at that club. Like, the attacking players that they have at their disposal is so amazing. And you've got someone like Jared Bowen who can play at centre forward very well. You've got someone like Mohamed Kudus who used to play centre forward for Ajax at points. Like, you don't need, like, the Nicholas Füllkrug signing was just so bizarre. Like, you don't need a centre forward who's primarily there to score goals. Like, you can have a centre forward who's also going to bring other things to the game, or not even necessarily be there to score goals. So you can have someone just to facilitate.
Even
Kudus.
A player that will sort of drop deeper and sort of facilitate Somerville and Bowen. Because I think West Ham are so lucky that Bowen has got so much loyalty towards them, because he's such a player. Yeah,
amazing. And he's at that age now where it's like, he's been loyal to them enough, and now it's like bigger clubs probably aren't going to come in for him, because he's got to he's 27, 28 now. He's 28. And West Ham can just price him out of the market, so they've got him for the long term.
Especially he's got a contract until I think it's 2030.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, they're kind of safeguarded in that sense, and it's just a case of getting the right tactics for them, because that attack is could be top 5 in the Premier League.
Yeah. I did a TikTok about it a couple of weeks ago about how that if I was going to sign anyone from the Premier League to replace Mo Salah in the nightmare scenario that he does leave, that it'd be Jarrod Bowen. I think he's a much better fit than Mbeumo or Semenyo, despite the fact he's that little bit older as well. I think he's a top player, and what with experience with England, experience in European competition, so consistent as well. Yeah, I think he'd be the one I'd go for, despite his age as well. But obviously, we want Salah to stay, and particularly Liverpool fans want him to stay. So I've got a choice between Evan Ferguson and Mikatadze. Look, I think in most scenarios, I'd go with Evan Ferguson, but I just think his confidence is really low at the moment. I think it's 1 goal in about 28 Premier League games. And given the fact that West Ham is the place where strikers go to die in many ways, with Scamacca and Haller, I feel like I'm missing some obvious ones as well. Well, Fulkrug recently as well. I just want someone that can maybe play in a few different other positions, that can fit more of a counter-attacking style, if that's what they're going to stick with for this season. So I'm going with Mikatadze, but it does hurt me a little bit, because I think Evan Ferguson is a top player, and I don't want him to get disrespected or forgotten about at Brighton. To be honest, I don't really why Hertzler sort of is denying him a loan move. I think at the moment it just makes so much more sense, because he's nowhere near that first team at the moment as it stands. So it is 2-2 going into the final club, which is Everton. Again, I have got a feeling you're going to be going for strikers, but I've got no idea, to be totally honest, but it would make a lot of sense. I mean, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is out of contract this summer. He scored 16 league goals in his last 3.5 seasons. He's underperformed his XG by 16.5 in the last 6 campaigns. And again, I put it on Twitter last week. I don't really understand the calibre of clubs that are always linked with Calvert-Lewin. He's always linked to clubs that are either in Europe or with European ambitions. To me, Dominic Calvert-Lewin needs to rebuild his career in the Championship or at a lower Premier League club. I just don't think there's enough evidence.
Harsh.
I think Everton is a difficult club to be the striker for sure. The service is not ideal whatsoever. But he's been poor for a long time now. A long, long time. Anyway, that's my Dominic Calvert-Lewin rant over. Mikey, why don't you kick off? Okay. Final suggestion for Everton. It can be any position.
Yeah, I've actually not gone for a striker here. I mean, Everton, like, there's a big, it's not just Calvert-Lewin. You've got Decore, Gay, Keane out of contract. Harrison and Lindstrom, their loans are due to expire in the summer. If they wanted to get someone on loan in January, they'd have to cancel one of their loans as well.
Are their loans full up?
Yeah, I think they've got the 2 domestic loan quota full up. So that's one thing. So they need to get someone in on a permanent, really. Obviously the Friedkin group takeover has now happened, and so I think we can anticipate Everton spending at least as much as PSR allows, but I think they're in a better spot with PSR than they were 1-2 years ago. And Friedkin group, of course, have a record of spending pretty big once they have their feet under the table.
Not
Remember
always
that
the most wisely.
Not necessarily, but go back to 2021 and that summer when they spent all that money, at least initially the hiring of Jose Mourinho, the signing of Tammy Abraham was, it was looking good, wasn't it? It was a couple of years later that things really started to turn sour. But
am I hearing Tammy Abraham to Goodison Park?
I'm not. You're not, I'm afraid. I didn't think it was realistic, and I think it would be quite a lot of pressure on Tammy Abraham. I considered, so I've gone for a winger. I considered Jadon Philogene at Villa. I've actually seen that they've been linked with him once again, and they moved for him last summer. But they'd have to cancel the Brozier or Harrison loan if they wanted to get him on loan. And also, I've gone for a right winger, and Jadon Philogene, although he's played a fair amount on the right over his career, his most productive form, at least at Hull, was on the left. That's where he likes to cut in. I stayed away from him. I also thought about Yeremy Pino at Villarreal, but I think that's just too punchy at this moment in time. At least in January, they need to pay a lot of money for him. So I've gone for someone else on the continent. I've gone to Milan, Samuel Chukwueze. I feel like this is a player who probably fits the theme of this video more than any of my other suggestions. I think he's someone who, I think he just needs the right environment, and he could really kickstart his career again. I mean, he's would he want to move from Milan to Everton? I'm not so sure. He's got a pretty good deal there, but also, his productivity has dropped off a lot since leaving Villarreal, but his performances in his underlying numbers, I think suggests that, there is still a very good player in there, and we're yet to see him have that, 10 goal or 10 assist season. But he was threatening that at Villarreal, and he just has, I think, a lot of the attributes that would make for a decent Premier League winger. And I think what Everton really need is just a balance in that forward line now. I think, Iliman Ndiaye on the left looks great. Dwight McNeil's had an amazing creative season. Yeah, the striker position is something they need to look at long term, but I think that would be hard to sort in January. Chukwueze's, very much behind Christian Pulisic in the pecking order at Milan. I think they're fairly well stocked across that forward line. And I don't think long term, he's going to be a starter there. His underlying numbers this season are great. He's taking over 3 shots a game. He's creating nearly 3 chances a game as well. Just under 2.5 chances a game, but still very, very decent. And in fact, when you look at his expected goals and assists per 90, he's beating people like Martinelli, who granted isn't having the best season, but also Kingsley Coman at Bayern Munich, players who are playing in more productive teams overall. So I think there is someone there that can be unlocked, especially if Everton, as I probably expect them to, move on from Sean Dyche at the end of the season and bring in someone with more attacking flair as a coach. So yeah, Chukwueze, bit of a wild card.
I like it. I liked Chukwueze, particularly at Villarreal. I thought he was sensational.
I'm going to come in and say I really was disappointed by what I watched Chukwueze recently. I was so disappointed.
I thought you were going to say you were disappointed by Mikey. I was like, fair enough, me.
Well, by default, yes.
I think with him, sort of similar to sort of the problem with Jack Harrison, is I feel like you've got a player who, in that final moment when it comes to making that decision, I question his sort of footballing intelligence on the pitch. Don't know if he's sort of looking out for it. You notice it a little bit. I think his sort of final move, I was thinking, I never really see him do the right thing.
Basics well enough.
Just what I feel like he should be doing. But no, it's interesting. I do think a right winger though makes a lot of sense. I think it makes a lot of sense because you look at Everton and only Arsenal, this was sort of at the end of last year I looked at this, and only Arsenal had scored more from set pieces, but yet Everton have had the 18th most amount of corners. So they're very low down on winning corners, but they're very good when they get set pieces. So it makes total sense for them to try and get someone that can help them win a few more set pieces, because they've got to get goals from somewhere. Yeah. And defensively, they can, now Branthwaite's back, they're solid. They can go into a game and concede 0-1. So if they can just get a goal here and there, I mean, I went for Romain Esse from Millwall because in my mind I'm thinking it's a tough ask to come to Everton because you're going to play a certain way, you're not going to have much of the ball, and a lot of what you're going to do, you look at Ndiaye on the left-hand side, a lot of what you're going to do is going to be about winning free kicks. It's going to be about sort of taking a game by the scruff of the neck because nobody else is there with you. So if they can have someone like that on the right-hand side as well for a bit of balance, I think it could take them up and elevate them. And Esse, Millwall in the Championship are very similar to Everton in that they also really don't have much of the ball. And why I chose Esse was he's talented, he's skillful, he'll take players on, he'll win free kicks, he's really strong in the legs, he's powerful, he can move up the pitch quickly, which is something Everton will need. But then also off the ball, he really helps, and he's got no problem helping. I've seen in games where a rotation between him and on the left-hand side, there'll be a balance, so someone will always come and help the defence for Millwall. And he played centrally in a game I watched recently, and even at the very end of the game, there's an attacking player, and he's tracking back and helping out to see out a game for Millwall. So I think it's someone who would transition that to Everton and wouldn't mind having to do that. But he's also a total talent and an asset for them, and they really need to be signing assets, I think, Everton.
I like it. Okay. Difficult one. I mean, Millwall are perennially stuck in the sort of mid-table Championship, aren't they? They have just recently appointed Alex Neil, who is a bit of a promotion specialist out of the Championship. Do they want to lose one of their best players in January? But this isn't about who's more achievable, about who's going to make more of an impact straight away. I think it's really, really difficult. I mean, the two suggestions to win this contest are one from Milan and one from Millwall, but one's a key player at Millwall, one's a bit part player at Milan. Oh, I've seen a lot more of Chukwueze as well. This is difficult.
I think Everton are whoever out of either of them. I think they'd stand a good chance of signing either. Everton are still a big club.
Big new stadium.
Well, I mean, I say that. I think they'd still I think SA would still be the more achievable in that sense in terms of that clear step up to a Premier League club who are going to have bigger ambitions in the next couple of years. So I feel like I'm talking myself out of a victory here, but yeah. Whereas I think for Chukwueze, I think it's an opportunity to kind of be a bit more of a main man in a team.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Oh, it's difficult. I've seen more of Chukwueze. I'm going to go with Chukwueze. I do really like him. I think there's the talent in there. And yeah, I'm going to go for him for a January signing. I think he's also potentially maybe less intelligent to go for right now, but maybe more exciting for the fans as well. And they do have this huge new stadium arriving. So McCubbin has nicked it 3-2 at the end. But guys,
got away with one there, I think.
That was a really high standard. I found that really difficult as sporting director. Guys, who did you think won? What did you make of the suggestions? Do you think Neve was robbed? Potentially. Justice for Neve in the comments. Guys, thank you so much for watching the Lowdown for this week. Neve, thank you so much for returning and coming back on the Lowdown. If people have enjoyed watching your stuff, I mean, they see you everywhere, but where can they find you?
Yeah, so it's the serious name of Stuntpeg.
Yes.
I've got all this serious talk and then I come out with my name. And yeah, so obviously on my channel you can watch, we talk about the likes of Swindon Town.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
I saw you on Accidental Partridge.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Accidental Partridge, which is normally bang on that sort of humour, did they not get it?
Do you know what? I think they did. I think I've spoken since to them. I think they knew it was intentional partridge. I've loved it. I've seemed to have coined that intentional partridge.
That's great.
Yeah, that was a very good clip. If you haven't seen it already, go check out Accidental Partridge and go check out Stuntpeg YouTube and of course Neve across all her socials. Me and McCubbin's handles are on screen now. Thank you so much for watching this week's Lowdown, guys. We'll catch you soon. Bye bye.